This is Randolph Love the Third, and you are listening to the Entrepreneurs Podcast, the place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. What I'm doing today is I'm handling a mitigation appraisal, an insurance appraisal. An insurance appraisal, for those of you who don't know, is it's not like a market appraisal when you're trying to buy or sell real estate. It's when two competent, that's the commonality, disinterested uh, professionals get together and appraise the value of a loss. So, an appraisal that I'm doing now is a mitigation appraisal. Now, I haven't done a mitigation appraisal in a while, but I am ICRC certified. I'm a water damage restoration technician. So what I do is I go through the documents presented by the OA, the other appraiser or opposing appraiser, and I consider OA to be other appraisal, but some people might say OA opposing. No, we're not opposed to each other. We're gonna work together to try to get this thing settled as efficiently as possible. But I look at all the documents from the other appraiser, and then I look at all of the documents from my client, which is typically the insured. However, something that we have here in Florida is called assignment of benefits. So we have that. So it's an appraisal to where my client is actually the assignment of benefits holder or the AOB holder. So what I'm doing now is I'm going through my material when I first was certified just to refresh my memory of the things that I know. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through the introduction to water damage restoration. All right. Uh, and these standards are coming from the IICRC. Okay. And we're going to go over that. Now, the book that I'm reading from is The Complete Guide to Cleaning and Restoration. It's the Complete Guide to Cleaning and Restoration. And they have sections for everything in here. They have water damage restoration. They have fire and smoke restoration, odor control, microbial remediation, trauma scene cleaning, upholstery and fabric cleaning, and carpet cleaning. They have the standards for this. So what I made sure to look when I was looking at the other appraiser's documentation, what he did was he submitted a comparative estimate from someone who reviewed the estimate presented by uh, the assignment of benefits holder, my client. Now, the things that I was making sure to document in there were the assumptions that he was making, right? And I wanted to confirm that he valued the opinions for the standards set by the IICRC, and I saw multiple spots in there where he showed that he values the opinion. He's saying that his assumptions are based off of these standards. So I say, boom, got that. And then I wanted to find that in this comparative estimate that this person valued Exactamate's calculations. And I have in there where it was one line where he didn't include it because Exactamate didn't have a line item for it. So if if it was worthy enough for somebody to remove something because Exactamate did not have it, that means that in turn you should be willing to let something stay if Exactamate does have it, right? So this is copywritten by Legend Brand 2017. Once again, it is the complete guide to cleaning and restoration, and I am just going to go through the introduction for you, okay? And then as I'm reading through the introduction, I'm also going to, of course, be giving my commentary on what it seems like. So here's the introduction, section 1. Water is considered the Earth's most precious resource. It accounts for approximately 70% of the Earth's surface, has strong bonding properties, and the ability to dissolve materials. Water is essential for life. Water is unique in that it is the only natural substance that is found in three states: liquid, solid, which is ice, and gas, which is vapor, at temperatures normally found on Earth. At the same time, water is the single leading carrier of pathogens in the world today. This potential for serious adverse health effects should never be underestimated. In Mexico, one person out of every 60 dies of waterborne disease. Um in Africa, a person dies each minute from such disease. Okay. Water is also the cause of damage in some of the most natural, in the worst natural catastrophes. North America encounters on a regular basis hurricanes, which amount in 8 of the 10 most costly catastrophes ever recorded in North America. As destructive as hurricanes are, they are not the leading cause of water intrusion and water damage in structures today. Excessive moisture also occurs in buildings because of construction defects, plumbing failures, damage from freezing, and even improper maintenance. And that's something that is I know that that's a fact. I'm from the beautiful sunny state of Florida, right? And I just so happen to know a lot of people that's involved in the storm restoration industry, where they assist people with filing claims as a result of storms like wind, hail, that sort of thing. Roofers, people who do sidings, general contractors, public adjusters, right? But the leading cause of claims in the state of Florida is what they call non-weather water loss, like water that causes damage to property from burst pipes, from drain pan leaks, from slab leaks, right? So clearly, back to the read, clearly excessive water has the potential to cause many problems in the built environment. The elements necessary to support microbial growth are always present. All that is required to initiate a destructive chain reaction of microbial growth is the addition of excess moisture. Where abnormal moisture is present, microorganisms will rapidly multiply and cause structural deterioration, create odors, and potentially create serious health issues for building occupants. When water loss occurs, the single most critical factor in defining the amount of potential damage is the amount of time the structure remains abnormally wet. It is for this reason that initially the most critical course of action in restorative drying is to respond quickly. That's the most critical, is to respond quickly. As a public adjuster, when you get that word of mouth going around, what's going to happen is you're going to get phone calls in the middle of the night where the pipe is still bursting, right? Or the house is still on fire. But especially when it comes to this water, you need to have contacts with mitigation professionals who respond quickly, who are there in less than 12 hours, right? 12 hours or less. And 12 hours might be a lot. Some people might have contacts to where these people are out there within an hour, within a couple hours, all right? But you definitely want somebody out there within 24 hours, right? To show that the insured, and whether or not you're a public adjuster, if you're just a property owner, just to show that you were actively mitigating as fast as possible. And when you see um, how fast a category 1 can go to categories 2 and 3, you'll see why you would want to have it to where you did it the best you can to prevent that from happening, right? So all other lessons covered in this manual pivot upon this very important principle. And once again, the most important, the most critical course of action in restorative drying is to respond quickly. The restorative drying process, assessment, uh, documentation, controlled drying, and selective replacement is used to recover from many forms of water intrusion. Much of what the restorer encounters during a drying project is influenced by a large number of variables. Due to the number of variables, the restorer must frequently revisit the tools, systems, and science throughout the drying process. So that's very important. One of the points that was made from the other appraiser that I'm dealing with was, hey, we sent this. I sent this out to get a comparative estimate, and I believe the clients that I'm at, they're at approximately 16 to 17,000. When I did my appraisal, I came at just over $12,000, and the comparative estimate was just over $3,000. And the other appraiser says the most he's willing to do is 6. So what just happened? All right. So the drying went on for approximately 5 days. Okay. And looking at the report, if you the report that was produced by the assignment of benefits holder that was doing the mitigation, uh, it looks like they only if you didn't know what you were looking at, it looks like they were only uh, they only checked visited and checked on the first day when they set up the equipment, and then visited and checked on the 5th day when they broke everything down. And according to this person who did the comparative estimate, the only reason the drying took 5 days is because they didn't check any of those days in between. And according to the IICRC, right, you're supposed to be revisiting the tools, the system, and the science throughout the drying process, right? So for that reason, the person doing the comparative estimate only did the estimates as if they should have only been there for 1 day. All right. And for them only being there for 1 day, it came up to that just a little over $3,000 number. And with the other appraiser coming back at 6, the conclusion that you reach from that, if the other appraiser is relying solely on the comparative estimate, and the comparative estimate says they're only estimating for 1 day because uh, the the machines weren't visited on a daily basis, and the measurements of the water wasn't taken on a daily basis. That's why they did it. My questions to my other appraiser is I need to figure out, how did he reach the $6,000? So questions that I would have is, how did you reach the $6,000 offer? And I imagine he's going to say because he relied on the other person's estimate, and he went from there. A question that I have is, are you not relying on? So let me just get through this book before I start going through all my strategies and all that stuff. So all right. So, but the long and the short of it is, I was able to find in the assignment of benefit holders where they not only did they put the measurements down for the daily visits that they have pictures every day that they took measuring the structure getting drier and drier each day. Because one of the main questions you'll see when we go through this documentation is they say, is it dry? Is it dry? That's the question that the technician needs to be asking themselves when they every time they go and check. Uh, and if it isn't dry, is it getting drier? And from those pictures each day, that structure was getting drier. Okay, so all restorers should follow the standard of care for water restoration profession developed by the restoration industry entitled IICRC S500 Standard and Reference Guide for Professional Water Damage Restoration. And once again, that is what that comparative person was relying on. When I taught this to this other appraiser, my job is to get him to agree that we should rely on the IICRC, just like the comparative estimate that he presented to me, just like that practitioner is relying on, right? And if I can show beyond a shadow of a doubt that the assumptions that were made by this person were are in fact incorrect, then we should he should be willing to keep going and talk more about how we can make this uh more what's the word I'm looking for, more equitable. All right, so the goal of the restoration process is to transform an abnormally wet, potentially damaged structure into an environment of equal or better appearance and cleanliness than before the intrusion occurred, and to do so in the most economical and efficient means possible. All right. The restorer begins this process by identifying all affected materials. Water must be tracked from its source and followed in every direction to establish an accurate perimeter of the flooded area. Next, the restorer documents what types of materials have been affected, a type of subflooring, type of carpet and underlay, type of wall construction, type of insulation. Affected materials are then evaluated against three criteria to determine if they should be restored or replaced. So that's the first. So what I'm doing is I have to be paying attention to not just the things that could work for my client, but for the things that can potentially work against, right? Because they said the most critical course of action was the restorative process was responding quickly. So they did that, and then the machines and the measurement should be taken on a daily basis. They did that. Okay. Uh, now I'm reading this, and I have to make sure to check to confirm that they did document what types of materials have been affected. So that's what I'm going to look for in their documentations, just to make sure that their got documented what materials were affected, because I want to show to my other appraiser, and I'm hoping that I'm dealing with a reasonable appraiser that's going to listen to reason, that they are following these processes and the type of so they want you to document the type of subflooring, the type of carpet and underlay, the type of wall construction, and the type of insulation affected. Okay. So the three main areas are degree of contamination, damage to the item, replacement cost versus restoration cost. Because sometimes, y'all, you see the lowest of all of the estimates that we're talking about is talking about what the comparative estimate was just over $3,000 to dry it. And according to them, it's 1 day of work. It should be just 1 day of work. And the other appraiser's offer was $6,000. And according to him, that's just 1 day of work. So one person is saying it could cost approximately $3,000 to dry this structure. Another person in 1 day, another person is saying it costs approximately $6,000 in 1 day to dry this structure. And really and truly, even though I'm the the assignment of benefit holders, their original estimate was just above $16,000. What's $16,000 divided by 5? Approximately $3,000, right? So it seems that they are right on par with what the lowest estimate is saying it should cost per day to dry this structure. And where I'm at, since it looks like it should be 5 days worth of drying. So yeah, I'm at approximately what, $5,000 to $6,000. No. Approximately $2,000 to $3,000 per day. Yeah, I think. Okay. So only after identifying the material and considering these three factors does the restorer decide which material should be dried. And the reason why I said that is, you see how much money it costs. The lowest per day is coming around $2,000, between $2,000 to $3,000 a day. It might be cheaper to knock it out and put something else back in. That's the point that I was getting at. The cost of drying might be more expensive than just replacing the item that was damaged by the water. All right. So only after identifying the material and considering these three factors does the restorer decide which material should be dried and which should be replaced. In addition, the restorer will also decide which materials should be dried aggressively and which should be dried through a more disruptive means. Right? And we figure out what the difference of aggressively versus disruptive, because uh, I think the average person, even though aggressive and disruptive are different words, I think the average person would say that, they could be used in a lot of the same contexts. A lot of the same contexts where you can say somebody is behaving disruptively, you can easily interchange aggressively and still get the same meaning across. But according to this, uh, material should be dried aggressively, which material should be dried aggressively, and which should be dried through a more disruptive means. So they're separating the two, okay? High value structural materials and contents that have slight reversible damage are dried aggressively. This procedure is referred to as drying in place. Drying in place means that the wet surface are dried with little to no manipulation. All right. So drying aggressively means another way term for drying aggressively would be drying in place. All right. And drying in place means that the wet surfaces are dried with little or no manipulation. So damaged materials cannot be decontaminated. Damaged materials that cannot be decontaminated are relatively low value and should and are relative are all right. So let me read it right. Damaged materials that cannot be decontaminated or are of relatively low value should be removed or manipulated to facilitate restoration. This process is referred to as disruptive and may include perforating materials, removal of surfaces or finished materials, for example, vinyl sheet goods, wallpaper, wallboard, etc., and the use of interior air drying systems. Okay, so uh, what they're talking about when so aggressively means drying in place. If you're drying something according to the IICRC, if you're drying something in place aggressively, you're not manipulating relatively nothing. You're just letting it stay and you're just drying it aggressively. However, if you're being disruptive, all right, you are perforating materials, meaning you're doing those drill holes. You're removing surface or finished materials, like you're removing baseboards and stuff like that, toe kicks, right? When you're talking about interior non-weather water losses, all right. and you're using interior air drying systems, all right, for the air to be forced in through those tubes, all right. All materials that are determined restorable are inspected further, and the amount of moisture absorbed by the material is measured and documented, answering how wet is it? That's that question that they're asking y'all. How wet is it? Is critical to the drying process for two reasons. This information influences the amount and type of equipment used. It is also necessary in order to determine if the drying process is being made on subsequent if it's necessary in order to determine if drying progress is being made on subsequent monitoring visits. And that's why that comparative person writing that comparative report was making a big deal about there being no documentation of those daily visits, because you need to be able to go and say, ask yourself each time, how wet is it? And when you're documenting, if it's not getting drier or it appears to be getting wetter, you need to switch up something. You need to change up the signs. You need to do something different. Okay. So drying progress is noted during daily monitoring visits. The restorer asks, is it drying? So you went from how wet is it to is it drying, while comparing the moisture readings taken from two separate monitoring visits. These two sets of data recorded on a monitoring report reflect the impact of the drying effort on the affected materials over a 24-hour period. If materials are making significant progress after the initial 24 hours of drying, then drying continues. No major change is necessary to the process. The restorer continues to observe the process until drying is complete. Okay, let me go ahead and highlight this, because once again, the AOB holder, oh, dang, how I do that? Cheap, cheap highlighter. But the AOB holder was inputting that data on a daily basis, and they were taking pictures of the moisture readers. So we met that standard. All right. So I'm looking forward to see, because it's moments like this where you can you can see exactly what type of other appraiser you're dealing with, right? Because it could very well be that this other appraiser is relying solely on this comparative report, which explains why they made such a lowball offer of $6,000 when I'm at 12.5, and I think it's very reasonable. And it is very reasonable comparative to what even they are saying 1 day of drying should be. So if you can reasonably multiply that by 5, then you got a deal. Because if you multiply what the comparative person says by 5, that's 15 grand. If you multiply what he said, that's $6,000 by 5. 6 times 5, that's 30 grand. And I'm at 12.5, and the AOB was at 16, right? If materials are not drying, it is clear that the current approach is not working. The restorer must reevaluate the equipment, systems, and processes, and refine his or her approach. The approach can be more or more disruptive. The evaluation process is identical to the initial assessment, except in one important detail. Now the material has been wet for an additional 24 hours. Damage and contamination are of greater concern. So see what they're saying now. Now, this is important, because one thing about different categories of water is, as the days go on, it doesn't matter what category it was when it started. As the days go on in areas that aren't typically wet are now abnormally wet for a prolonged period of time, like they said, uh, that microbial and pathogens begin to multiply to an alarming and damaging amount. All right. This cycle of evaluation and reevaluation must continue throughout the restoration project. The critical element of the process is that drying progress must be constant. If the drying process is not working, the restorer must modify the drying environment by adding or subtracting equipment for or possibly removing wet, non-salvageable materials. The most economical and effective methods are best identified by a consistent focus on contamination, damage, and cost. The restorer must constantly ask, is it done? So we went from how wet is it, to is it drying, to is it done? All right. And during the monitoring process, this means the restorer must know what done is. The material must be compared against a dry standard or drying goal. As materials return to their dry standard, equipment is reduced. Only after all drying is complete is equipment completely removed entirely. It is important that the restoration process and procedures are carefully evaluated to ensure that they are appropriate, because every job is unique and the approach should also uh, be unique. Being able to adapt and change to ensure a proper fit between process and structure will translate to significant time and cost savings. The restorative drying process was designed to ensure that each critical and dynamic variable is considered to achieve drying goals based on a dry standard. All right. So uh, they have an illustration here, and let me look at it to see if I can even describe it. Yeah, it's just like a yes no chart breaking down what you should do. All right. Okay. All right. So what are the principles of drying? Okay. So the IICRC S500 Water Damage Restoration Standard and Reference Guides describe the task of water damage restoration through 5 principles. Okay. So principle 1, provide for the safety and health of workers and occupants. So one of the things that was on my on the assignment of benefit holders estimate is that safety material, and this is the first principle: provide for the safety and health of workers and occupants, because you got all of those pathogens and you got people dealing with those high levels of pathogens on a potentially daily basis, since this is what they do for a living, walk into structures that have been that are abnormally wet for days on end. Ain't no telling what's floating around, so you want to protect their lung systems. The technician's first responsibility when arriving at a water damage site is to identify and eliminate safety hazards. The restoration contractor is responsible to provide for the health and safety of workers and occupants during the restoration procedures. All right. So what is principle 2? Document and inspect the project. The restorer must evaluate the extent of water migration and be able to measure the amount of moisture absorbed by materials in order to properly scope the work to be done. As drying is attempted, the restorer must verify that anticipated progress is actually being achieved. Due to the number of variables present that affect the drying of materials, progress cannot be assumed. Frequent inspection and monitoring is therefore essential. Okay, restorative drying is a dynamic process in which a number of variables are constantly influencing the restorer's intended result. returning the structure to a clean, dry, and safe living environment. The nature of these variables demands the restorer conduct several inspections of the drying environment. So you have the initial inspection to identify items that will influence the restorer's end goal. So that's important. So I think what the person who was doing a comparative estimate, they saw that they took some measurements at the on day one and day five, and I can't remember exactly at this moment what those measurements were that they took. But this person, the technician, only had to take that measurement in the beginning because it was helping them influence identify items that will influence the restorer's end goal. All right, I only need to know these measurements on the first day and the last day, because once I know these measurements on the first day, that's when I can put my structuring my applied structural design plan together and then go from there. Okay. Ongoing inspections to ensure that expected progress is being made, and final inspection to ensure materials have dried to predetermined goals. Okay. So what is principle three? Mitigate further damage. Okay. Drying decisions are made based upon critical information the restorer obtains during the initial assessment. The inspection may not only the inspection may not only check the must be the type of right check the extent of moisture intrusions, but also considers the potential for additional water damages. All right. So you control the spread of contaminants. One form of secondary damage is microbial growth. It can cause structural components to lose their integrity and potentially impact indoor air quality and may ultimately result in compromised occupant health. The restorer identifies any health concerns arising from pre-existing conditions or from the water intrusion. Care is taken to contain contaminants and not spread them to unaffected areas and structures. Control moisture intrusion. All right. So first, they're controlling the spread of contaminants, and this is them mitigating further damage. So they're controlling the spread of contaminants, and they're controlling the moisture intrusion. The source of water intrusion must be stopped, and any further moisture intrusion controlled in order for the restorative drying effort to return the structure and contents to an acceptable condition. The technician will determine whether any building materials in the affected areas could suffer potential secondary damage. All right. So what about principle four? Clean and dry affected areas. So cleaning procedures are, and that's important because that is the cleaning of such was meaning. The cleaning was listed in the comparative estimate and also the assignment of benefits holders estimate, right? And and but this person is saying that they want some sort of documentation that cleaning was done. So the way I see it is this is what they're doing. Now I'm gonna look through the assignment of benefit holders documents. I think they have over 70 pages of documents. I'm gonna look through there and see what did they do to document the cleaning. But even if they don't document, let's see what they say about cleaning. Cleaning procedures are used whenever soils and debris must be removed to expedite the drying process. Contaminated materials that can be ultimately restored require cleaning uh, either before or after the drying process. Any highly porous items affected, such as valuable contents, require intensive cleaning. Okay, so this said nothing about take your pictures and document uh, the cleaning that you just did. It said nothing about that in cleaning. So if somebody's saying that they clean and therefore everything else that's supposed to be documented according to the IICRC S500 has been done, and then they say that they and so in everything and you can document me verifiably so that they are doing these things, if they say they clean and it says they don't have to document anything regarding that cleaning, you have to give them a benefit of the doubt. I think so. What about drying? Restorative drying contractors manipulate and control as many factors as possible in their drying system to produce the most efficient drying. Once as much water as possible has been extracted, evaporation of remaining moisture is enhanced by lowering humidity in the affected air, increasing the airflow across wet surfaces, controlling temperature of air and surfaces, using outside air when possible, creating a drying chamber. Okay. All right. And basically, they have a chart here basically talking about the cost of damage and contamination. They have one arrow going to RIP, which is disruptive. And like we said, disruptive, that means that they drilling, they might be drilling holes, they might be taking off surfaces, they might be throwing things away. And the aggressive is when they, all right, we can dry this in place. We don't have to be disruptive, but we do have to aggressively dry this material to ensure that it gets dried as quickly as possible to reduce any microbial growth and things of that nature. Okay. Uh, Evaporated moisture must be removed from the affected areas by dehumidification or ventilation. Additionally, knowledgeable restoration contractors recognize that each lost site is different and they adjust methods based on each situation, including adjusting or removing equipment when necessary, removing items that should not be dried, saving items that can be dried in place, and using specialized tools to dry difficult areas. Okay. And principle number 5 is complete the restoration and repairs. The water restoration technician's job is not done when the materials are dry. As the drying proceeds, restorers have to reevaluate the condition of structural items or contents and consider whether they will require refinishing or repair to return them to a pre-loss condition. Any building materials that were removed or disrupted will need reconstruction. The job is not complete until all affected materials are clean, dry, and equal or better in appearance and function than they were before the loss occurred. So that is the introduction to the complete guide to cleaning and restoration, and they're using the standards from IICRC S500. So if y'all want more content like this, let me know, right? Y'all want to hear this stuff, because I know some of this might help you in the future, right? When you're dealing with these type of claims. Once again, my name is Randolph Love III, and you are listening to the Entrepreneurs Podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe wherever you're streaming this. Make sure you share with a colleague, share with a friend. Make sure you always check the show notes because a lot of times we have events there. We have different things there. We have some sponsors there. I appreciate you for listening.